Showrunners. You might never have heard the name, you might not know what they are, but they are the most important people in bringing us our favourite TV shows, all the stuff we love. Showrunners are the guys. And the cameras have finally been turned on them with a new documentary, probably entitled Showrunners. Here to tell us all about it is the creative team behind it. We have Des Doyle, John Wallace, and McGuffey. Welcome to the stage. Gentlemen, I'll leave these lovely people in your capable hands.
Hello. Oh, that's loud. Can everybody hear? Yeah. Can I ask just out of curiosity, is anybody familiar with the film at this point in time? Does anybody here follow us on Twitter or Facebook or a couple of people? That's great. Do we have any Kickstarter backers here? Thank you. We're going to talk to you afterwards. We're going to show you a couple of bits and pieces today. Since some people weren't that familiar, we're going to start off with a trailer that introduces you to what the film is and some people who are in the film. And then we're going to talk a little bit about the experience of making it. But we really want to try and make it a conversation rather than us talking at you. So we want to know who the people in the film you're interested in, what kind of shows you're interested in, what kind of shows you're interested in, so we know who to put in the sequel. Just to introduce briefly as well, this is Ryan. Patrick McGuffey is the co-producer on the film. He's come all the way from glamorous LA to be here today. And John and myself have come all the way from not so glamorous Dublin. We're delighted to be here. This is the first event that we've ever done in London, so we're delighted. So we're going to start with the trailer, if we can, please.
When I started off at college, I was an economics major, and then I discovered playwriting. So I ended up being a joint theater and economics major, and people always thought that was a stranger's major. What are you going to do with that? It turns out it's showrunner.
There is some value put on a singular voice. Showrunners were kind of invisible up until now, up until we branded ourselves.
This is a little bit like a rock concert for a showrunner.
The burnout rate for showrunners is 100%. 100% of the people who do this stop by their mid-to-late 50s, whether it's successful.
If you're doing everyone that you've come into contact with, actors, the other writers, the other producers, the network, the studio, if you know that things are going well on your show, if everybody's just a little bit with you. I try not to get caught up in those, but I do read other people's ratings.
Brandon, this is full of spoilers. I'm a little hesitant to speak. Don't hesitate. Go ahead.
I've probably spoken out against the networks 2 or 3 times in my career, and yet now I find out in this high network, which is amazing because I'm afraid for them.
Anytime I stand on set where you're in some crisis, it's like you're going to do this, and this, and this, and people are like this, and I'll say, but I'm not curing cancer. This is a TV show.
Thank you. Does it look like something you'd want to watch? Okay. I'm going to start off just talking a little bit about why we wanted to do the film and where the kind of inspiration for it came from. We're all diehard kind of TV geeks, Uber nerds, grown up on a steady diet of American television for a long period of time. When I was growing up in Ireland, Irish television would make its own shows. There was a huge amount of American import, so it was the A-Team, it was Night Rider, it Star Trek. And those shows always seemed kind of bigger and brighter and full of beautiful people who were doing amazing things and special effects, which seemed really cool. And then through the 90s, with Chris Carter with the X-Files, with Joss, with Buffy, started to get really interested in how television was changing, how serialized storytelling was starting to become a big thing, and how people were starting to pay a lot of attention to the people who were writing and producing the shows, and that they were starting to develop their own followings. In the 2000s, that took a quantum leap, and I think the show that really changed everything in terms of the show was Lost. Anybody a Lost fan here today? What happened with Damon and Carlton on that show? What happened with Damon and Carlton on that show is really kind of game-changing for the industry, because they were put out to front the show in a way that no one had ever been before. They were fronting ABC specials, they were on late-night talk shows, they were interviewed everywhere. For a lot of fans, they were more important to hear from than the actors involved in the show. And for me, that was a real game-changer, and I really, from that point on, was sitting around waiting for somebody to make a documentary about them, because I thought these people were fascinating. The job they did was almost impossible. And when nobody did, we decided we would give that a shot ourselves. Do you want to say anything about that? Okay. We're going to play the first clip that we have. I'm going to show you a few exclusive clips from the film. This one kind of locks in a little bit on that point about the rise of the showrunner and how showrunners have come out to the forefront a little bit more in recent times. So if we can.
I think it's in the Comic-Con is extremely important, especially for a genre show like Spartacus. The first time we came here, the response was fantastic, and it really helped launch the show.
This is a little bit like a rock concert for a showrunner. Writers are on the forefront now, just like actors and directors. People, more than ever, understand how shows are created, and you really need to not only promote your show, you need to represent your show.
Showrunners were kind of invisible up until now, up until we branded ourselves. You know, the old adage is there's only one thing that's being talked about, and that's not being talked about. And so, yes, do I need a publicist? Yes. Do I need to Twitter? Yes. Do I need to brand myself? Yes. Do I need to be known as JT instead of Janet Tamara? Yes, I probably do.
I think that given the online fandom community, that people now have a place to go to sort of immerse themselves in the universe of the show that they like. On a certain level, you kind of require the showrunner to be present in some fashion, because the showrunner ultimately is the one who has the answers to the questions that people have. So there's probably a certain rise in celebrity that goes along with the showrunner.
When I started out, the idea of the internet community was very, very fresh. In fact, I was way in the middle of that, and so were my writers and on to my actors, that was a new phenomenon. And to be able to write and have people recognize you and be able to speak to you about it is more than a writer usually gets.
Do we have any Joss Whedon fans? Out of curiosity, do you guys here follow particular showrunners on Twitter? Is there particular people that you might be interested in? The microphone, maybe, is there anybody who'd like to let us know if there's someone in particular they follow? Is anybody a big fan of Stephen Moffat?
David Fincher.
Before House of Cards, is it? What is it about House of Cards in particular that you find so interesting?
The new concept of how the TV series is made, how actually Frank Underwood doesn't just stick to the other characters, but it turns and it speaks to you as well. All this kind of stuff.
Okay. Have you seen the original BBC series? Or?
No, I didn't. I heard it's completely different from the original BBC series. They wanted to remake.
Okay. Anybody else here? Is there anybody else who is a particular showrunner that they admire?
I got a couple over here.
Matthew Weiner from Mad Men.
What is it, may I ask about, or, sorry, we got something.
Dan Harmon.
Okay, we've got two there for you.
Dan Harmon's an interesting case in point, actually, I suppose, in what's happened with Dan recently. I'm sure community fans feel a bit bummed about recent decisions in that regard. But it is interesting about the way the communities are built up around showrunners and how things have changed in that regard. To the point where networks and studios are now almost placing an emphasis on the showrunners themselves. Contractually, that they must have a Twitter account, they must be on Facebook, they must engage with fans in social media because it's becoming so important for them to try and have their shows stand out from the crowd, stand out from the noise. And it's one of the things that we kind of look at in the film, which I think we're going to show to you, if we can now, in a second. If it does, can we go to clip 2? Sorry. Oh, sorry, the social media clip, can we play that? Is there anybody down there?
You got anybody doing the clips there?
The clip on the social media? Okay, this is actually dealing with actors, we'll talk about this in a minute.
Please tell me you've got a documentary film. The show's in its third year. You can replace behind the camera, you cannot replace in front of the camera. So if there's a huge fight, if you're not getting along, and it comes to who's going to stay, the actor will probably. The Bochco quote I heard was the first year they work for you, second year you're partners, and the third year you work for them.
This is such a good idea.
Okay, these are
Triple time. There's a triple time.
You don't even know.
When I'm dealing with my cast, the occasional hot temper is impossible to avoid. If you're lucky, the arguments that you have, it's all based in character and story and trying to do the best show that you possibly can. And try to focus on this constructive because generally there's a note to be had inside a vicious argument.
I really, try to not bring poison into my set. And an actor's reputation of being poisoned, I don't bring them on. I don't care how good his work is. I don't want somebody undermining the energy that we have on the set that ultimately feeds the work and what the show is and how people perceive the show.
We'll come back to the social media in a minute, but this section here, which the clip we just saw in terms of dealing with actors, is one of the single most important things that showrunners have to do. From casting the show in the first place and making sure they cast the right people, to dealing with them over extended periods of time when temperaments and egos can become quite difficult to manage, possibly even on both sides. I don't know, are any of you fans of Revenge, the show? Some of you watch that show? Okay. Are you familiar with Mike's story, what happened with him a little later on? He had some tensions with some of the cast on that show, but he also had some problems with the network, and that ended up with him actually walking away from the show at the end of the second season, which is a very difficult position to find yourself in if you're the person who's actually created the show in the first place and it's been your baby. But he fought very hard for the things that he believed in and wanted to do, and unfortunately the network didn't agree with those things. It's a situation that can crop up a number of times. That dynamic is hard to explain from the clip. By the time the show becomes a hit, second or third season, really all the power is with the actors and not with the showrunner anymore. And that can be a little difficult to deal with because, to be honest with you, the showrunners are doing way more work than the actor is. I know that's a fair comment. There are a couple of real examples of that where it got very interesting. There's a show called Blue Bloods, which is very popular, a CBS show that Tom Selleck is the star of. When that show started out, the two people who wrote it and created it weren't experienced enough to actually run the show themselves, so they very experienced showrunner named Ken Sanzel. Very early on, Tom decided this is not the man for me, I want him fired. When you get to that situation where you're as big a star as Tom Selleck, it's as Hart says there, unfortunately it's the showrunner that goes, and in that situation the network backed up the star. Sorry, I wasn't trying to talk about sorry. It also works the other way though, in terms of showrunners sometimes have to fire actors that they're finding it difficult to work with, or people that they think are not giving them the performance that they want. One of the most famous cases, and this came down to audience taste as well, is when Damon Carlton killed off Nikki and Paolo in season 3 of Lost, who were possibly the most ridiculous characters that ever seen on the show, and because the audience hated them so much, they were giving the death that they deserved. But it is a very interesting dynamic, especially if the show is going on over 5, 6, 7, 8 seasons, can really affect it if there is tension and difficulty between the showrunner and the cast. Hart always says he's kind of blessed with David and Emily, that they've kind of been problem-free for the entire run of the show. And although Hart says possibly one of the most beloved showrunners we've ever come across, there isn't a single person on this crew or cast that has a bad word to say about him, which, if you've been running a network show and producing 22 episodes or 8 seasons, it's quite an extraordinary achievement on a basic human being level. So I think we're going to try, if we can play the social media clip now. That'd be great, thank you.
The internet was sort of just becoming a thing we were going for. On specialty websites, we sort of see early stages of consensus of what people think of episodes, and it really did become clear to me that this was, TV was becoming a little bit like theater, where you perform something, and almost in real time you'd be hearing the laughter or the applause or the absolutely painful death and silence. And what was kind of great was you could use that as one of your tools.
I love Twitter. I feel like I was born to tweet. It's a way for me to sort of let people know who I am. You can tell when the fans are tracking the story. You can tell when they're confused. You don't want confused fans. You can tell when they're bored. You don't want bored fans. So it does give you a way to take the tension. But Twitter could be kind of dangerous. If the writers of Cheers had had Twitter, they would have been deceived by people going, it's Sam and Diane together. And like, sometimes what the fans want is different than what they really want.
Very rarely do I interact with the very negative criticism, but sometimes there's something so egregious that I just have to comment. And I've gotten into a dust-up twice now that I can think of, where I found out later I was actually in a yelling match with like a 12-year-old.
Is that 12-year-old in the room? The social media thing has become such a huge and important part of for example, has anybody here ever live tweeted watching an episode? If you have the mic for 1 second, I'm just curious what the appeal of that is for you. What sense of community that?
Well, just see what other people think, and if they when they watch the TV series, they think the same thing I do, basically. Just,
And are you more interested in what the other audience members are thinking, or what the writers or actors that are taking part in the tweet are saying?
Well, I didn't come across a lot of writers, actors, and stars that interacted in a lot of tweets. They do interact on Twitter and Facebook, but it's quite rare to get to interact with them.
Okay, which shows are you watching?
House of Cards, Bates Motel.
Oh, Bates Motel has done a couple of tweets already.
Yeah, even Bates.
Yeah, the time difference probably doesn't help.
Oh, that's fine.
Yeah, it's okay. Did I give you something? Okay. Are there any particular showrunners or writers that you follow on Twitter? Joss Whedon. You know, it's funny, when we interviewed Joss, this is going back a little bit in time, we actually interviewed him literally the day after the Avengers opened, the opening weekend of the Avengers, so he's in quite a good mood that morning. But he was also about to start his first vacation in 2.5 years. But he, at that time, didn't...
This is an announcement. That's Alex Soden. Could you please make your way to the esports area where your friends are waiting? Thank you.
That sounds like dialogue Joss could have written.
I think she's making a voiceover too.
But he at the time, he was kind of talking to us off camera. He was a little wary of Twitter and kind of, you know, maybe giving too much away and having to talk too much about projects or whatever. But he's actually changed his mind over that period of time and come on, and now he actually loves it. I think it's given him a whole new lease of life. Do you guys want to weigh in?
Which part?
Any part you want.
How did you come up with the idea for tutors?
That's a very unfair question. Someone we interviewed who hasn't made the cut, who shall remain nameless for reasons that they made us drive around LA for a day and a half, chasing them for the interview, and we ended up in their Malibu mansion, which was a very nice place to live if you wanted to, but they wanted to see the questions in advance, and when they saw them, they said, yeah, I'm not answering any of these. Scribbled them all out, flipped a piece of paper over, and wrote the questions they wanted me to ask them. In the handwriting of a 4-year-old child, if you ask. But
with a crayon.
With a crayon. But we didn't go there at all in the film. I'm going to show where are we going now? We're going to quick about ratings. Ratings is obviously a hugely important thing for a showrunner. Some guys pay a lot of attention to it. Some guys don't want to know so much because they kind of feel there isn't that much that they can really do about it because they can't decide when the show is scheduled, they can't decide when it's preempted, they can't decide when the network put it on hiatus. All they can really do is what they do to try and hold on to things. Obviously, in this day and age, with so much competition from online...
This is an announcement for David Vieira. Announcement for David Vieira. Could you please go to N3? Thank you.
It becomes even more difficult, and the whole ratings process is, for some of the showrunners out there, they think it's kind of a scam at the moment. The system that they're using, the Nielsen rating system, is quite antiquated, and they don't think it properly reflects the amount of people that are really watching the show. Networks have become very obsessed with the demographic, the demo number, rather than the number of people who actually watch the show, which is the way the ratings are worked over here with Bar. It's more important how many actual viewers you get in total rather than how many people in the 18 to 25 age group you get watching. But here's a little piece of better ratings.
The number at which you survive, and there's a number at which you don't survive. You get feedback, it's called ratings. We respect that aspect of the business, and we understand that the network has to maintain a certain number of eyeballs on your show, or else
we go to a bunch of people and ask them to give us a couple $1 million a week to tell our little opinion stories. That the idea that they should do that with no strings attached is madness. Right. You know, it's other people's money. If there's stockholders out there somewhere, I don't know who invests in television now, that's a horrible idea.
If you pay too much attention to the things that are completely under your control, like when they're airing, when they're preempting you, how many people watched that night, and whether or not it went up or down from last week. If you start doing that, then you start losing control of things that are within your grasp. All I can do is tell a better story. Obviously, if there's a clear drop-off, then you should look at that. But I do read other people's ratings.
My reason alone in that actually a lot of showrunners do pay close attention to the ratings of other shows and tend to look at any show that's above them in the top 10 or the top 20 as something of an enemy. But it is, as I was saying before, something that is changing, and it's going to change, I think, even more dramatically over the next couple of years, because for Netflix, even for Hulu, for Amazon, for their online providers like that, the ratings are not as important as the subscriber build, and if those shows are bringing new subscribers, that's more important to them going to talk a little bit about the difference between showrunning in the UK and showrunning in the US. Do you guys have a favourite UK showrunner? Apart from Stephen Moffat. Does anybody here rate Chris Chibnall or?
We got one in here.
Ray Whedon, it's a more comedy than that's brilliant.
Okay. The system over here is quite different to the way that people in the US work. Most shows don't have a writer's room. For most shows, it's one writer producing all the scripts because it's a lower episode number, and there isn't quite the same demands placed on them from. You're not in the situation. Most of the time over here, you're dealing with one broadcaster. For the showrunners in the US, they're generally dealing with both the network that airs them and the studio that actually produces the show, that pays for the shows to be made. And that can cause a lot of political difficulties that maybe the showrunners over here don't know. But I read a really interesting article with Chris Chibnall recently where he was saying that just the very use of the word showrunner in front of his name, and he was now trying to use it as much as he possibly could all the time in press, because it felt that it was actually empowering him with broadcasters over here in a way that he didn't have it before. That by using that term, he was actually elevating his status in their eyes a little bit. Obviously, it helps that you have a couple of big hit shows on you as well, but he found the usage of the word very important. I think Stephen Moffat has done that as well. Russell T. Davies may be one of the first people to be kind of called it here. But it's for me, it's kind of interesting how different the two processes are over here. I think at this stage, we'd love to try and involve you guys as much as possible. So if anybody has any questions in relation to the clips they've seen, anything about showrunning.
This is an announcement for Nicole Connolly. That's for Nicole Connolly. Could you please take your way to the free
Yes.
I'm very interested. These guys are obviously ridiculously busy. How did you get them to come on board to be interviewed? Was there any resistance at all? You mentioned somebody nameless previously, but was everybody up for it? And how did they kind of come on board for you?
We chased into the men's room and harassed them until they relented.
It's funny actually, he's only half joking. A lot of showrunners spend a lot of time in the bathroom because it's the only place they can go where they're not chased by assistants or their phone or somebody asking them a million questions. But it was kind of, it's a little bit different with everybody that we had in the film. Some people were relatively easy to get, some people were almost impossible to get, some people it took us a year to try and get them.
When Des started down this road, I was pushing out 4 years ago, he had a dream list of about just 8 to 10 showrunners that he wanted to secure for this film, thinking that that would be enough to tell a big story, or at least get a cross-section of them. The film features
22
in total, the 30 interviews, the 22 that are actually in the film, the finished cut. And the problem quickly became, like, how are we going to get to these people? You know, no one knows who we are, or no one within this community. But once they started talking to each other, it became like a very interesting problem, like an inversion of what we had expected. The problem wasn't how are we going to get to them, it's how are we going to fit them all into one film. Because once, you know, they started hearing about this, they started calling us, in some instances. Some instances we didn't have to approach them, we were getting calls. Des was getting calls, John was getting calls. We were getting emails, people on our Facebook even making comments about why isn't such and such in this film? And do you know him? Like, no, sure, put us in touch.
That is one of those frequent questions that we do get asked, is why is insert name of showrunner not in the film? There's two main reasons. One, we asked them and they didn't want to do it for whatever reason, which they're perfectly entitled. Or secondly, we just couldn't make the schedules work because obviously they are incredibly busy people with very, very difficult schedules. We get very, very narrow windows of time where you can try and maybe get into them for an hour or two, or in the circumstances like with Cards where we're trying to follow them around on a much larger basis on that camera. Those things took like 6 to 8 months to try and set up and make work. There's so many people to try and clear and get approval on and stuff like that. But yeah, I mean, there are some people that I would have loved Benny off of Weiss from Game of Thrones would have loved to have gotten them, but they're hardly ever actually physically in the US anymore because Game of Thrones shoots all over the world.
The saddest part of that to me is still the fact that like one of our production partners on the film, had an office literally down the hall from Game of Thrones in the same building. We'd see their name on the placard as we walk by, and we're like, oh, we just slip a note in the door, like just a teaser trailer like on DVD, do the mail slot and see what happens.
Yeah, actually,
we were never brave enough to do it.
That particular studio where the office was a fantastic place as well because the True Blood shoots on that lot and their writer's room was there as well. So sometimes we'd be coming out from editing there at 2 or 3 in the morning and you would see all the writers and Alan Ball through the window in the room, like tearing their hair out and trying to figure out what the hell to do with True Blood season 6. Or 5, which I think was Alan's last one. But yeah, it's do you want to talk about the job story?
Well, another, kind of on the same points of how we made this approach, just to answer your question. Once in a while, you're very fortunate, you just have those magical moments when you never think you're ever going to be faced with. And in this instance, it was Joss Whedon, who from day one was always on the list, one of our favourites, both personally, professionally, for all reasons. He's a consummate writer, amazing writer. And as we're coming out of the writer's offices of Fringe, we literally stumbled upon him randomly as he's doing like post sound on the Avengers. Nothing related whatsoever to anything involving television. And he's standing there like the guys are having a cigarette and having a chat about whatever's going on, whatever the daily events are. And it takes we just kind of stop and look at each other like, what do we do? There's no protocol, there's no precedent set for this. What the hell do we do here?
Because when we had been trying to get to him for months through
and you don't want to fuck it up, like you've got this one shot at him, you don't want to screw it up so you don't know what to say.
Yeah.
But I think
we did start
I think I tried to tell him and said I love you. And he said, okay, I'll do it.
It's pretty terrifying when Ryan tells you
it helps when you have, the pedigree of writers that he's helped raise up.
She's so good.
Could you please go to N3 where your family are waiting? Thank you.
Like Jane Espenson and Steve Tonight, who were both in the film and wrote with him on Buffy the Vampire Slayer and Doghouse and Angel, Firefly. So when we said that we have these other writers involved that we worked with, and they've said that this is something you might be keen, might be interested in doing. He's like, I think I've got a few things I'd like to say about Showrunner. And we set it up and we shot it at his house.
So is he your favourite? I was going to say, who was your favourite? Is there one of the guys who gave you more than you could have expected?
Oh, to choose a star from the heavens. So many good interviews.
Yeah, actually, everybody gave us more than we expected. We were kind of very shocked with how candid people actually were. I don't know whether we opened them to a false sense of security or not because we were Irish, but they literally, as people were saying things to me sometimes, I would kind of go, is he really saying this? Which is great.
Could you please take it away to N3 where your family are waiting? Thank you.
A lot of those moments are actually in the movie. I think people will find them quite fascinating. But for me personally, one of my all-time favourite interviews was Damon Lindelof because when we shot with him, it was at a very early stage of the film and we were still trying to open doors for ourselves over there. And when he agreed to do it, when people knew that we sat down with him, that really helped us with the other people that we kind of wanted to get to. And he's amazingly, what's the right word to it? He's a fascinating person to listen to speaking, it's just the experience that he went through on Lost is something that I don't think, even Carlton, I don't think shares the same level. I think the hate for some reason at the end of that show was all directed towards Damon, and the fact that he's been hated off Twitter is something I find really obnoxious. No matter how disappointed people may be with the ending of the show, it's just the ending of the show.
I think some of that had to do with the speeches. We love them. We love Lost. I can't wait for The Leftovers. Any of you guys?
Yeah, have you guys seen any of the trailers and the HBO series? I think that's going to be really awesome. It starts in June 10th. Yeah.
We have some questions in the audience here now. Guys, I know, yeah, there we go. I don't have loads of things right now.
This is an announcement for Andrew Smith. Can Andrew Smith please make his way to the N4 organiser's office or make himself known to a member of staff? Thank you.
Good night, Andrew Smith.
Wherever you are.
Did you ever consider sacrificing
Early on, we had talked about, like, is it worth covering animation? And Des responded with?
No. Not that it's not worth doing, but I kind of made a decision earlier on to just focus on drama and comedy, not animated comedy. Because there were a lot of people as well coming to us from reality shows and stuff. And to try and tell the story that I wanted to tell, those were the people that we wanted to focus on for this particular film. But we did actually recently meet Steve Callahan, who's currently running Family Guy, and we did a panel with him in WonderCon in Anaheim about 3.5 weeks ago. We also, Chris Carter was also there. We met Chris Carter, which is mind-blowing.
She's like right next door to Steve, you didn't get to
but Steve actually hadn't heard about the film, but once he saw the clips, he wanted to see it, so I took that as a good sign as well. And maybe he can write us into an episode of Family Guy, you know,
That's when you know you've made it.
Questions? Yeah, I'll come back to you. I know you weren't there. We've got another baby here.
Hi.
He's very open. He has very open relationship over social media with friends. So, what about you?
There is a difficulty because there's literally so many shows. There's about 100 shows currently being produced every year in the US. It's just not possible to include everyone. When we do Showrunners 4, we might have gotten through everyone by that stage, but there's also new guys coming up all the time. It's almost impossible task. So unfortunately, it wasn't possible to include everyone, but we certainly think there's enough very, very interesting people in the film that you guys will really want to see. Am I right? Yes. I'm so delighted to see that.
I'm heading over here because I'm just doing.
You're getting quite the workout today.
I'm curious whether, out of all the showrunners that you spoke to, whether there was any sort of common personality traits that you saw in all of them that might have contributed to their success as a whole.
It's a great question.
Isso é uma notícia para o David Pereira. David Pereira, filho, vai para o F3. F3, tudo está esperando lá. David Pereira vai para o F3.
Did that answer your question?
Yeah, they're little PA announcements. I think the biggest trait maybe is that you must have singular vision and you must be able to convey that to 13 other people, which is not as easy as it sounds. I remember Andrew Marlowe talking to me about who runs Castle, because he'd come from a feature film writing background, so he basically spent all his time huddled away in a room with a laptop, and that was writing for him.
Did he write Air Force One?
He did write Air Force One. But when he made the gear shift to going into television, suddenly he was managing 13 other people in a writer's room and 300 other people working with him to run the show. He found that a little overwhelming when he started. So you do need to be able to stamp your authority on something very quickly and be able to answer pretty much any question a network, a studio, a writer, an executive throws at you, even if you don't know the answer. And that answer must be convincing. It's quite a skill, actually.
I wanted to just come in and ask a little bit, you touched on it briefly, but about the documentary making process. And you mentioned briefly the whole crowdfunding experience. I I've never heard of that until really a few months ago, but it seems a lot of people on stage today and tomorrow have all had crowdfunding experiences for their project. What is going on? Are the money people just not giving any money out anymore, or is it basically more control for you to have your own project and raise your own funds?
We'll hand it over to the producer.
It's a little bit of all of both, to be honest with you. It's a great way to start early and engage the audience.
This is an announcement for Andrew Smith. That's Andrew Smith. There are two lovely ladies waiting in the office who'd like to see you. You can make your way to the organiser's office. Thank you.
It's a great way to start early and start reaching out to your intended audience and start the process. So I don't think it's probably a combination of just a lot less money out there, or that money being pulled back, and also just new ways of engaging with your audiences.
I wonder if it was kind of just a lazy way for the money guys to go, you know what, why do we need to put money into this when the people are going to do it themselves? I mean, I know at the end of the day, money's important, people don't want to take a risk on something new, so are they just kind of, are they being lazy?
No, I don't think so. You know, a lot of people, there was a lot of questions asked about Veronica Mars, there's a lot of questions asked about Zach Braff when he did his run, Spike Lee as well. It tends to be the situation whereby there's no other way that they can actually get the money to do it. We were in a situation where we had a certain amount of money that we shot with, but we needed the money to finish the film, to post-produce the film. And Kickstarter saved their lives really there, you know. It's a very valuable resource in a way as well, because yes, thank you. There is a community of people there who have an interest from the get-go as well, and hopefully will help you spread the word about the film.
But I guess it ties up with social media you were saying earlier as well, because you kind of have, not only do you have fans, you now have people who are actually involved, so you have a kind of ready-made fan base.
Yeah.
It's a very interesting.
Yeah, that's the great point, is that a lot of Kickstarters take the position of, well, I have a thing that I want to make, and I need you to help me make it. In our position, we're very fortunate that John was able to secure, you know, the Irish Film Board, rally the troops and get them kind of behind Des, and then if I could liken it to, like, rather than getting behind a train and pushing it, like, we were kind of like on a rocket ship that John had already kind of helped, you know, get off the ground, and we just need more fuel to put in there. Really.
John builds
but the thing about crowdfunding is often when you approach a funder, it's one person or two people making that decision, you know, and it can be quite disconnected from what the real fans want, you know, and their taste may be quite different, whereas when you put it out through crowdfunding, you know, people are either going to respond or they're not. If they don't respond, maybe you shouldn't be making it, you know.
Okay, we've just got time for a couple more questions from the audience. Do we have any? Yep, a minute for this working. I'm not wearing heels tomorrow.
It used to be that the show would get a series before the future of it was looked at, and now it seems individual episode ratings are getting more important, and even more than that, you get instant things like Twitter and Facebook. Do you think that trying to please everybody and being so instant to everything means that good shows aren't getting a fair chance to actually progress sometimes?
Absolutely.
Yeah, that is absolutely true. It's primarily true on network television. People who are in the broadcasting business.
Think about if Twitter was around when Firefly was on.
Yeah, you know, I mean, I think
no way it would be constant.
Things like that would have made a huge difference. But it's difficult if you're running a network like Fox or ABC and you put X amount of money into producing a show, X amount of money into promoting a show, and when it launches, your advertising is prepaid for it and it must meet a certain benchmark in order for the money to keep coming in. If it doesn't meet that benchmark, they get panicked very quickly and say, okay, let's pull that out and try something else. I think on cable, in this day and age, every show is guaranteed at least 2 seasons, unless the first season does phenomenally badly for them. And that model is much more sustainable because you just need far fewer people watching. And whether it's basic cable or premium cable, what they're looking for from an audience is very different than what one of the big four networks is looking for, which is why it's much harder. Although if you can make a successful show on a network, you're making much more money on cable.
River Street recently.
Yeah, River Street is a great example actually of how things have changed. Actually, things are changing every day. It's very difficult to keep up with how much things are changing, but the fact that Amazon has stepped in as a direct result of audience outcry about that show being cancelled and made the BBC change their minds about it is a real. There is some people power there. People do listen to fans if there's a really strong level of support for a show. I actually do think if Firefly was happening now, people could really turn that situation around.
Maybe we should start campaigning to bring it back.
Oh.
Well, you made a good point earlier on in the day before the panel about Pretty Little Liars and how they've turned their numbers around just using social media without it's a free tool and she just jumps on there.
I don't know if anybody watches the show.
It's okay.
It's okay. But for me, I find it fascinating how they really use Twitter.
Don't judge.
Their Twitter statistics are phenomenal to the point where Deadline Hollywood are actually reporting the Twitter statistics for every episode of that show that now airs because it sets a new record with almost every episode that airs. And that's translating into real new viewership. Like their numbers are up nearly 75% over the last 2 years.
There's so many other metrics as well that they can take into account now. So much quantifiable information from every aspect of news, media, Twitter, social media.
Yeah, it's like,
so many things to measure.
Fringe would not have gotten that final 5th season and the chance to finish if the fans hadn't been so dedicated and so local about wanting to get an ending for a show, because I think networks are copying on quite a bit to the fact that people won't invest to start off with if they think there's any risk that they're not going to get an ending.
I think there's a documentary just about the rating system.
There's a documentary about a network for sure.
Yeah.
They won't let me make it.
I would be very curious to know how that's weighted, how the Nielsen ratings and American television system are weighted now, and how it's changed over the years and how that's informed.
Bit of a slightly negative question. Any unexpected hitches? Anything you've got, hitches in there? Anything that really just came out of left field that you were like, well, we did not plan that?
We flew out to New York to visit Terrence Winter on the set of Boardwalk Empire. And when we arrived, they told us there was no electricity, which posed some problems, to say the least, for us, because we couldn't power lights.
Apparently, need electricity to run.
Yeah, we had some virus, but that particular day with Terry was a nightmare from start to finish. The weather really screwed us. We had sound issues, we had camera issues, camera went down 3 times, and the gear had all come from LA, so we weren't really in a position to get a quick fix done. But the wonderful thing about when things like that happen on this particular film is those guys come up against these same problems every day, and Terry was just so understanding. He stayed around with us for an extra hour while we tried to sort everything out, and we just chatted away about everything, and he was really lovely. So, and actually, pretty much everyone that we've dealt with in the film has been incredibly helpful and supportive. I'm hugely grateful to everyone who's taken part in the film.
Okay, one final question. It was down here somewhere. Who was it? Someone had a question. One final question. Make it a good one. Oh, there we go. I knew there was a hand somewhere. Hold on 1 second.
So I was thinking about the idea of showrunners sort of taking the status on TV that directors haven't come to, and sort of saying to celebrities. I was wondering if you or anyone who you interviewed had any idea why it's the writers on TV that have the celebrity and it's the directors of the film, and I don't know, whether that's going to change.
It's basically as a result of the way that the US television industry has evolved over the years. If you go back to the 60s and 70s when you had shows like Cannon and Streets of San Francisco being produced by Quinn Martin. Quinn Martin was a showrunner, but he was only a producer, he wasn't a writer, or what they call a non-creative producer. around the mid-80s when MTM, Mary Tyler Moore started, when we were doing shows like Hill Street Blues, they found it was actually much easier to let the writers kind of go away and do their thing and not be micromanaged. And that was really the kind of the birth of the shift in power away from the producer to the writer-producer, which is where we kind of ended up with the showrunner at this point in time. Directors are effectively hired hands on a TV show. I mean, obviously they're important. On a pilot, they're super important, which is why choosing a director for the pilot is one of the most important decisions a showrunner will ever make.
They're extra important in the showrunner is also the director.
Yeah, that's happening more and more as well. But yeah, it's been a slow evolution, and it's funny, Hart Hansen from Bowman said to me, he's not even entirely sure that that's the way that things should actually be, but he's very happy that it is the way that things are.
So what is the schedule now? When are we, when grace the awesome movie that is Showrunners? Do we have any idea?
We just finished it in March, April, and so we're an independent film, and so we brought it to market in Cannes last week and showed it to...
Yeah, actually, so we got our first ever review last night in the Hollywood Reporter, from Cannes, which was a really positive review, so we're delighted with that.
So we're in the process of working out Ireland, the UK, and the States and whatnot, but end of the year.
I mean, it looks fantastic, yeah. I'm sure you'll really click through some slides, they're absolutely fantastic. Final word from you guys, slightly off topic. Filmmakers, we have a few budding filmmakers in the audience. Bit of advice for them, what would you say? Maybe based on your own experience, or just a kind of word of advice?
Take care of each other.
That's actually true. That's actually quite true.
No one makes, every movie that ever gets made is a fucking miracle, whether good or bad. But it takes all sorts of people from all walks of life to get things pushed over the line. This is a prime example. We're in our case, you know, we're all very important components in different ways. But no one can do it on their own. You need each other. And if you know someone's a filmmaker trying to get something pushed over the line, the best way to get your film made is to possibly help someone make theirs. I know that's the case for me. If you don't have money, try to find a way to help others. Stop trying to make your own thing until you're ready to do it, and maybe try to find someone else who's maybe farther along in the process and learn how they're doing it. Surround yourself with people who are smarter than you.
The one other thing I would say is whatever idea it is that you're trying to make, you must love that idea to the core of your being, because there's going to be so many stumbling blocks and so many difficulties to overcome and actually trying to get the film made that you must have 100% belief that that idea deserves to be made, I think.
John actually is a pretty experienced film producer and came up as an AD through the Irish film industry, and he would be actually a very good person to ask.
Yes, if you want to
standing over here after the panel, you should be refused. Because answer all of your questions to stay as long as necessary.
He talks for pubs.
Also free house.
Can I just say two quick things just before we finish? Would it be possible to put up the still of the book cover? I'm just going to do two shameless plugs. Just this is the companion book to the film, which is being published in September, which is written by Tara Bennett, who's an awesome writer who co-wrote the Fringe, September's Notebook, and the Lost Encyclopedia, and a lot of other tie-in books. It's published by Titan in September. And then if we could throw up just our social media links again, just for the end, we would love you to follow us on Twitter and on Facebook. Come check out the website.
We're just going to use
it actually really helps us right at this moment in time to get kind of as many people on board online following us as we possibly can. Just really helps us with the release process, so that would be fantastic.
Could I just give a shout out to our editor, John Murphy?
Yes.
Who's
the man with the beard.
Recently married, and who has been so much part of this process with us. So.
Yes, actually, I have to say, John Murphy was singled out in the Hollywood Reporter review because the role that he played in making the film is just phenomenal. So
we're just trying to parse him.
Where are you, John? We need to look at you. We need to see your
There he
face.
is.
Oh.
He's the fifth Beatle.
Is that awesome? Guys, thank you very much. This has been a really fascinating panel. It's really been quite eye-opening.
Thanks for having us.
Do please check out the social media links, and I'd just like you all to give a big round of applause and a massive thank you to our guests, Des Doyle, John Wallace, and McGuffey.
Seriously, thank you. If you guys do have questions,